This project's a little more than I first thought. When I first announced this project with this 1/16 Bezgar truck, I asked you guys to give me some input. I wanted this to be sort of a community build. I wanted to build it around your suggestions. I did honestly have a couple of opinions myself, the way I thought the build was gonna go, and you guys turned me in a completely different direction. My original plan was something sort of like the Sierra car kart, like I mentioned, kind of like a street bashing, but also able to go off-road, just a really cool kart style build. But posted a picture in one of those polls, and you guys seem to really like the low slung F1 style build. So when dealing with an F1 style build, the first thing was finding some wheels and tires to fit this thing. Luckily enough, these wheels are 12mm hexes, so it's not like I had to find something super fancy or special to work here. But if you followed a little more, you would have seen I posted that I picked up some F1 wheels and tires, and the offset on them just doesn't work with the hubs here. And actually, I believe that's gonna be the case with most of the options out there for the Formula 1 RC stuff. Those are kind of specialty builds, and so as a last ditch effort, one of you guys suggested I check out the tires from the Tamiya F104, and like I mentioned, finding wheels to fit with these hubs and everything just wasn't working out. But I went ahead and picked up a set of these tires anyway, just to see size wise how they would look, and I really do think they're gonna be the perfect size once we figure out a body and the suspension on this thing. So now it's to find a wheel for these tires. Well, not so much find a wheel, but why don't we just make one? Yeah, I knew I wasn't gonna find a wheel to work for this purpose, not without buying and returning and buying again and just going through a trial and error process basically. So I figured I printed some wheels for the K5 Blazer that I'm building right now, so why couldn't I print some wheels for this? Granted, this is gonna be a lot faster than that truck. These wheels will probably take a good bit more abuse. So this ABS resin is definitely gonna be put to the test. But it's been a pretty good challenge to get some wheels printed out for this thing. Let's go over what we did so far. You can see in my first iteration of the wheel here, I had a wheel that I was modeling all of this off of, and I wasn't quite sure looking in the computer how these spokes were gonna look as I got them printed out. Looking at the measurements, I thought they were gonna be way too small, so I beefed them up a bit. The wheels came out okay, as you can see here, but those spokes are a little bigger than I wanted. I'm not real happy with that flange in the center, but they do seem pretty strong, so I think I can make those spokes a little smaller. The main issue with these wheels is the way the bead works on the tire. This is the first time I've seen a tire with a bead like this. I'm pretty used to the typical beads on RC tires that I'm sure everyone's familiar with, but this tire actually has a lip inside of the bead. You can see, maybe if I zoom in here, that groove. There's a groove inside of this bead here, and it looks like a wheel should have a lip that would slide inside of that groove. So after a bit of trial and error on getting the dimensions right, I think I have a good lip that'll sit in that groove. It should make these pretty easy to glue up actually. But like I mentioned, I wanted the spokes to be a little thinner, give us more of that F1 look. So I went back in, thinned those up, and got some reprints done. And you can see these spokes look a lot better. This is what I was going for. Little side by side here for you to see. This is the larger spokes on the left, the smaller ones on the right. This wheel is still plenty strong. I'm not worried about this at all. I think we have a lot cleaner of a look here. These will mount just like all other RC tires, minus the fact that we have to make sure that lip slides inside that groove. Kind of finicky to get it on there, but I know this will hold pretty well once we get it glued on, and they give off a pretty good look. The issue that no one really talks about when it comes to 3D printing wheels, probably because not many people do it, is actually getting clean prints out. The main issue I'm having right now is these are the only two clean wheels that I have that prints came out good and they're usable. I have some more printing now and hopefully they work better, but getting the supports right on these resin prints where every part of the wheel prints correctly has been pretty tough. This is what a lot of them have looked like. You can see the hex on the inside there wasn't formed correctly. I believe I just didn't have enough support on the bottom side of that hex there. So hopefully this next batch that I have printing now works a lot better. Once those come off of the printer, I should have a full set, and then we can get these things painted and thrown on there and see how they look. While we wait for those other wheels to finish printing out, let's talk about the body. In the picture I posted on the poll, the F1 style build was like a Ford Model T or something like that. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna find a body like that that's gonna fit this truck. And I don't want the weight of a 3D printed body on this. This is gonna be a street basher. I want it to be light and fun. So I found something else that should be pretty cool. This is a Volkswagen Bug body. Now I've seen a couple of renderings, images, whatever you want to call them, of some Volkswagen Bugs slammed on an F1 chassis, and it looks pretty sweet. This is more of the sand dune style, but it's what I could find that would fit. I think once we cut it up and get it mounted on though, get this thing sitting nice and low, it should look pretty cool. First off, let's get it cut along the original body lines. It was probably pretty obvious to make this work. We had to remove bumpers, the wheelie bar, and I even removed the little side pieces that they had on the side of the chassis. Actually gonna have to cut these nubs down on the side of the chassis as well. We'll do that later on once we get everything figured out. Now we can see the body's gonna sit down a little bit. Right now, you might notice that I took the body mounts off. What's stopping us is the shock towers. I need this body to sit a good bit lower than this. And this is the next opinion I need, the next part where I want to know what you guys think I should do. In the rear, I plan on just trimming the body around the shocks and leaving these shocks, maybe making a new shock tower to raise the shocks up a little higher. That way it'll drop the back end down a bit, getting us that lower center of gravity. For the front though, I'm not sure if I want to leave the shocks sticking out where they're visible like this. Here's my idea. I know that this shock tower is held on by 4 screws here and the 2 screws that act as hinge pins for the upper A-arms. Same thing in the front. We need to get it down a little further too. That way we have a lower center of gravity. I'd like those control arms to be sort of parallel to the ground like that. But I don't want to just extend this tower as well, because I don't want a shock tower sticking out the top of the body where you can see it. That'll throw off the whole look I'm going for, I believe. I'm thinking of creating a pivot point. So the hinge pin screws would still screw in here, and we'll probably use these screws to hold it in as well. But instead of a mounting point for shocks, inside here, I'd like to put a pivot point and have a cantilever and just use a push rod going to that cantilever and use some smaller shocks laid down on the inside of the chassis here. Similar to the e-Revo setup, if you've seen one of those. My idea is actually to use some mini e-Revo shocks. It'll basically be set up just like a mini e-Revo front end is. I might even be able to use the mini e-Revo cantilever arms in the front here. That would allow me to really set this thing down pretty low and set that body on even lower, and you shouldn't be able to see any of the suspension in the front. All you'd see is a push rod coming up from the A-arm. Let me know down in the comments below, what are your thoughts on that? Should I run the cantilever in the front? Should I leave it just like it is and just let the shocks stick out? Drop some comments down below on your ideas. What direction should we take this suspension? Can't go wrong with a little gloss black wheel, can you? Now all there's left to do is glue these tires up on these nice pretty wheels, get them installed on the truck, and we can see how everything looks with that body, even though the body won't be in its final location yet. I can already tell this is gonna be really fun. Just seeing this thing with these nice little wheels on there, I think they came out great. It was a bit of an effort trying to find some wheels and tires that'll fit this thing the way we want in this build, but in the end, I think this is the look we were going for. I think it'll look pretty cool. Be really excited to get this body on. I can just imagine it already. Chassis sitting low like that and that body sitting low You won't be able to see any of the chassis as far as I want to put the body down. This should really be a sweet little build. So like I mentioned, you guys leave some comments down below. Let me know what you want to see me do with the suspension here. Should I go with that cantilever setup up front? Should I leave the suspension exactly as it is? What should I do in the rear? Extend the tower like I talked about, or go cantilever in the rear as well? That's my next focus on this thing, is suspension. Once we get the suspension figured out, everything else is appearance. Body mounts, front spoiler, rear wing, all of that stuff, all appearance wise after that we can take care of. But for now, we have to figure out the suspension. I hope you enjoyed this video, seeing me figure out the wheels and tires for this build. Nice little 3D printed wheels. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you don't want to miss the next part of this build. And like I said, to participate in giving me your opinions, voting on those polls as we decide what we're doing with this car. And as always, thanks again for watching. Peace.